Welcome back to another video designed to help you conquer the digital SD. Today we are diving deep into one of the most challenging types of questions in the reading and writing section, which is text purpose questions. We've all been there trying to figure out what the author really means, what their goal is, or what the text is trying to accomplish. Many of you have told us that you struggle with these questions because they can feel tricky, vague, and even misleading. Does the author want to inform, persuade, or entertain? Sometimes it's hard to tell. But don't worry, I've got your back. In this video, I'm going to break down a simple, effective strategy that will help you easily identify the author's purpose in any text you come across. By the end of this video, you will have the tools you need to consistently answer these questions with confidence. And here's the best part. Stick around until the end and I will give you a special bonus, a practice tip and example that you can apply right away to sharpen your skills and boost your score. So let us get started and turn this challenge into a strength. You will see how simple text purpose questions can really be with the right approach. Let's dive in. Now, to begin with, in the text purpose question type, you might come across two subtypes. The first is whole text, the second is part to whole text. The whole text type basically means that you have to identify the purpose of the whole text, whatever the text is given, of the complete text. You need to identify what the purpose of that text is. But when it comes to the part to whole text, a particular sentence would be underlined in the text and you need to identify what is the purpose of that sentence that has been underlined. What is it doing to the text, right? So this is how the two subtypes can be differentiated, and in this video we'll be taking up examples for each of these subtypes. Now let's see the common question stem for the two subtypes that we just saw. For the whole text, the question stem remains the same. That is, which choice best states the main purpose of the text? Very simple, very easy to remember. As soon as you see the mention of main purpose of the text, you should know this is a whole text type of a question. But when it comes to part to whole text, there are different kind of question stems that you can come across. Let's see the first one. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined sentence in the text as a whole? So it would say function of the underlined sentence. This should be the key word that indicates that you're dealing with a part to whole text kind of a question type. Which choice best states the function of the underlined sentence? Again, we have the mention of function of the underlined sentence. You need to identify why that sentence has been given, right? The significance of it. The third question stem, which choice best describes the function of the second sentence? Now again, the function of a particular sentence, they have not mentioned underlined, but it has mentioned one particular sentence in the text, right? So overall, when you look at a question stem and you identify the mention of main purpose, you should know the whole text question type. And when you see something like function of the underlined sentence or function of the second sentence, you should know you're dealing with a part to whole text kind of a question type. Now with this understanding, let's go ahead and see the strategies that we can implement for both the subtypes here. Alright, so the first one that we're going to see is whole text. Now what do we do when we see a whole text purpose question type? It's a 5-step strategy approach. The first one would always remain the same. You have to read the question stem to know what is the type that you're dealing with. The second step is you read the text. You follow a particular technique when you're reading the text, right? Now, why do we need to follow a particular technique? We will be getting more into the details of this particular step when we take up the examples later in the video. The third step is identify the topic of the text. Now that you are done reading the text, you have to identify what is that topic that they are discussing in the whole text. When you're done identifying the topic, you will move on to the fourth step, that is why of the topic. Why is the author discussing that topic? It's a very simple question. Why is he talking about it? Right? And when you identify the why, you will move on to the option elimination stage. Here, you are simply going to identify the wrong ones first and eventually get to know what that correct option is. This is the strategy that we are going to take up for text purpose whole text subtype, right? Again, we simply don't have to know the steps that we are going to take up. We also need to learn how to implement them. We will be taking up easy, medium, difficult level questions implementing these steps, so stick around. Let's see the strategy for the part to whole text type. Now this is a 4-step strategy approach. You will read the question stem to know that you're dealing with a part to whole text type. The second step is that you will follow the reading technique similar to the whole text subtype that we just saw. You will be reading the text in a particular manner. And the third step would be that you will be identifying the significance of the underlying text. What is the importance of that particular underlying text? Why is that sentence even being mentioned in the text, right? Once you are done identifying that, you will move on to the last step, that is option elimination. Again, you're not looking for the correct one right away. You want to eliminate your options first and then eventually identify which out of these options would be correct. Now let's go ahead and implement these strategies, these steps in the first question that we take up on whole text, easy difficulty level. Alright, so now we are aware of the steps that we need to take for a whole text question type. Right? Now let's go ahead and try and implement those steps. The step one was to read the question stem. Which choice best states the main purpose of the text? So I see the main purpose being mentioned here, which tells me that I have to identify the purpose of the whole text. With this understanding, we'll move on to the step two, that is read the text in a particular reading manner. Now, what is that reading manner that I'm referring to? What I'm trying to say over here is that we are supposed to identify the main purpose of the whole text, correct? Which means we don't have to get into the details of everything that we read. We need to identify the purpose or the why of the whole text, but not a particular detail. So let's read the text in such a manner where we don't get into the depth of every detail that's been mentioned to us. Composer Florence Price won first place for her score symphony in E minor at the 1932 Foundation Awards. Now, what is the sentence telling me? It's talking about this person Price, and this person Price won first place in something in this particular year in this particular awards. Now, I don't have to remember what was that thing that she got the first place for and what was the name of the awards. I don't have to get into the details of this. All I need to remember is that this person is a composer and she won the first place for something in 1932. With this understanding, let's read the next sentence. The piece was performed the following year by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, a significant recognition of its quality. Now, this sentence is simply telling me that this piece that she won the first place for was performed later, right? The next year, it was performed by some orchestra, which also gives this particular piece a significant recognition, right, of its quality. But again, what am I taking away from this sentence? That this piece that she won the first place for was performed by some orchestra. Later, Price continued to compose many musical pieces throughout her career, blending traditional black spirituals with classical European romantic musical traditions. Now, what do I take away from this particular sentence? This sentence tells me that Price continued to compose. She continued to compose more music pieces. And how did she compose? She basically created a blend of two different things, right? Traditional black spirituals with classical European romantics. So all I need to take away is that she continued creating more music but in a certain blend, right? That's it. In recent years, Price's concertos and symphonies have been performed and recorded by several major orchestras, further preserving her work for others to enjoy. Now, this sentence is further telling me how her work is being performed and recorded by several major orchestras, right? It's getting recognition, right? It's renowned, it's getting recognition, it's performed by others. They're trying to preserve her work for others to enjoy. Basically, if I have to say what this particular text is talking about, it's talking about Price and her accomplishments as a composer, right? That's the topic of discussion in this particular text. It's talking about Price, right, and her accomplishments. Why are we talking about Price and her accomplishments? Because the author is trying to tell us how recognized she was, how her pieces were known by people and were performed by people, recorded by people, right, by major orchestras. It's all about the purpose of the whole text seems to be like about Price's accomplishments as a composer, right? Now, when I say that you need to identify the why of the text, that the topic of the text is Price, the why are we discussing about Price? Because we want to talk about her accomplishments. You can always tentatively identify what is the why. You don't really have to have the exact answer with you, because we are going to go to the option elimination step and try to eliminate a few options and then identify our answer in any ways, correct? So you're not looking for the exact why, you're just tentatively trying to understand the text better. Now let's go ahead and eliminate our options. Let's understand the reasons as to how you can eliminate your options. Let's look at A. To provide examples of Price's importance as a composer. So there are examples that are being given to us in the whole text, like symphony in A minor. Her blend was performed, and by Price's concertos and symphonies have been performed and recorded by several major orchestras. We do have examples of what of her importance as a composer, how important this person is as a composer. We do have examples for that. So I do find nothing wrong in A as of now. Let's go to B now. To argue that major orchestras should perform Price's compositions. Now, nowhere in the text did they tell me that more orchestras need to perform her compositions, right? All this text told me that the Price's compositions were performed, were recorded, but more of these orchestras need to perform her compositions is not being told me in the text. So B is out because this is out of scope. You can also call this irrelevant. It's just irrelevant to the text. It's not even being talked about in the text. Let's go to C now. To describe the musical styles that inspired many of Price's symphonies. So option C is basically telling me that the purpose of the whole text is to give us a description of the musical styles that inspired her. Now I do see a mention of the musical style that she followed, that was a blend, right? Traditional black spirituals with classical European romantic musical traditions. But do I have the description for these? I don't have the description for these in the text, right? Which means the text is not about the description of the musical styles that inspired her. C is out because the description doesn't exist in the text. Out of scope again. Let's go to D. To compare Price's scores with those of classical European composers. There was no comparison given to us in the text between Price and European composers. There was no mention of any kind of a comparison like this. So D is definitely out. Again, the reason will be out of scope, not being discussed in the text. So very clearly we can see that we could eliminate our options because they can be simply irrelevant to the text, something that's not even being discussed in the text, right? So out of scope was the reason over here to eliminate most of my options. I've got the correct option here, that is A. Now with this understanding, we have understood how to take up the whole text type of a question. We will go ahead and take up a part to whole text kind of a question now. Alright, the difficulty level of this question is again easy. The first step is always going to be read the question stem. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined portion? Mention of function of underlined portion tells me that I'm dealing with a part to whole text kind of a question. Now once you have identified this, we will go ahead and read the text. Now this is a blurb that's been given to us. What is a blurb? It's basically giving me more information of where this text is taken up from, or what is the character in the text doing, right? Or something about the author. Let's read this particular blurb to understand our text better. The following text is from Devi's 1894 novel, The Fatal Garland. Shakti is walking near a river bank that she visited frequently during her childhood. Now this person, Shakti, this is the character of the text that we are going to read. She is simply walking in a river, near a river bank, which she visited frequently during her childhood. Let's read the text now. She crossed the woods she knew so well. Okay, so she has crossed a certain part of the woods of the place that she's walking in, and she just knew that place so well. The trees seem to extend their branches like welcoming arms. Now this is the underlined sentence where I need to identify why this particular sentence is being given to me. Correct? Now if you read the sentence properly, it's simply telling me, it's given some human-like figures to trees. And by giving human-like figures, what is the author trying to do? It's trying to tell us that it looked like even the trees were welcoming Shakti, right? She felt so welcomed, she felt so warm over there that it looked like even the trees are trying to welcome her. She just felt very good in the place. They greeted her as an old friend. Soon she reached the riverside. So basically, this underlined sentence, if I have to identify the significance of this underlined sentence, it's simply telling me that Shakti felt very good in that environment. So good that she felt like even the trees are trying to welcome her. Correct? Now let's go ahead and start eliminating our options. It suggests that Shakti feels uncomfortable near the river. Now, if she was feeling nothing but comfortable in that environment, because this was the place which she frequently visited during her childhood. She knew the place so well. It looked like the trees are welcoming her. So there was no point of saying that she felt uncomfortable near the river. This is out because this is contradicting the text, right? So this is one more reason how you could eliminate the options, something that's just simply contradictory to the text that's been given to us. Let's look at B. It indicates that Shakti has lost her sense of direction in the woods. Lost her sense. Now, the text clearly told me that she crossed the woods she knew so well. This is a place that she visited frequently during her childhood, so it is a place where she probably knows the direction. So B is out because this is also contradicting the text. Let's look at C. It emphasizes Shakti's sense of belonging in the landscape. Yes, she is certainly feeling very belonged in that place. She felt very warm. She felt like even the trees are welcoming her. So there is a sense of belonging in that particular landscape, in that environment. So I got nothing to eliminate in choice C. There's no word that's going wrong here, so I've got nothing to eliminate here. Anyhow, I will move on to choice D now and see if I could eliminate that. It conveys Shakti's appreciation for her long term friendships. Now, here trees are simply given human like figures. The trees are simply given human like features. It's not trying to tell me that the trees were actually like her old friend or long term friendship, right? There was no sense of long term friendship as such. Correct? The trees are simply given human like features. They have been personified, but there's no such appreciation for long term friendships that's been explained to me in the text. So D is out because this is out of scope. You clearly have the correct answer. That's choice C. Right? So here I could eliminate options because they were contradictory to the text, and also an option was just simply irrelevant to the text. There was no long-term friendships being described in the text. These are some of the reasons how you could eliminate your options in part 2 whole text and even in the whole text subtype. Now, with this understanding, we will move on to the next difficulty level question, that is medium. Alright, so we have a whole text subtype question now, and the difficulty level is medium. The first step is read the question stem. We see the mention of main purpose. We know that you're dealing with a whole text question type. Let's read the text now. Early in the Great Migration of 1910 to 1970, which involved the mass migration of black people from the southern to the northern US. Okay, take a pause. It's a long sentence, so we need to take a pause to understand it better. What are we talking about? We're talking about the Great Migration of this. What did this Great Migration involve? It involved mass migration of black people from southern to the northern US. That is what the Great Migration involved. Movement of black people from one side of the US to the other. Political activist and Chicago Defender writer Fannie Barrier Williams was instrumental in helping other black women establish themselves in the North. Now understand, this is a very long sentence. We need to identify what exactly the sentence is trying to tell us. Now all of this, which to the part US, is basically nothing but non-essential information, right? Why it's between two commas? If you have already taken up the grammar topic, that is non-essential and essential clauses, you will know this is non-essential, which keeps you to the main part of the sentence, that is, political activist and Chicago Defender writer Fannie was instrumental in helping other black women establish themselves in the North. So this person, Fannie, was very important in helping other black women establish themselves in the North. They were migrating from the south to the north, and this person, Fannie, helped the black women establish in the North. This is what the sentence is talking about. This is the primary thing that we need to take away from this particular sentence, that Fannie helped the black women. Let's read ahead. Many women hoped for better employment opportunities in the North because in the South they faced much competition for domestic employment and men tended to get agriculture work. So women were basically hoping to get better opportunities in the North, right? When they moved, they hoped to get better opportunities because they were facing issues in the South. A lot of competition in domestic employment and men were taking over the agriculture work. All in all, what I need to take away from this particular sentence is that women were hoping to get better employment opportunities in the North because there were issues that they were facing in the South. To aid with this transition, Barry Williams helped secure job placements in the North for many women before they even began their journey. Because they were facing issues in the South, they moved to North. And who is helping them out in the North? Barry Williams. This person is helping them secure job placements in the North even before they were starting their journey. The whole topic of this text is about this person Barry Williams who's helping the black woman secure job in the North, right? The purpose of talking about Barry Williams is basically to tell us how Barry Williams helped black women establish themselves in the North. That's the purpose of the whole text. Again, you don't have to have a very direct or a very exact answer to the purpose. You can have a tentative understanding, and with that you can move on to the option elimination stage. Let's look at A. Now, before we start reading the options, you can see very clearly that options are very lengthy, right? When you come across such lengthy options, always try to read half of every option and see if you can eliminate something from there. So let's look at A first. To introduce and illustrate Barry Williams' integral role in supporting other black women. Let's stop there. So yeah, the whole text is about the introduction of this person, Barry Williams, and illustrate to show how this person helped supporting the other black women. So I don't have anything to eliminate over here, so I'm going to hold on to A. Let's go to B now. To establish that Barry Williams used her professional connections to arrange employment. Now stop there. Nowhere in the text did they tell me that how was it that Barry Williams was able to help these black women. How did she help them? Did she use her professional connections or did she not? I really have no clue because the text is not talking about. Right, so B is out because I don't know how she was able to arrange employment for these black women. So B is out because this is out of scope. This is simply not being discussed in the text. How did she do that? I don't know. Let's go to C now. To demonstrate that the factors that motivated the start of the Great Migration were different. Okay, now stop here. Let's just stop here actually. To demonstrate that the factors that motivated the start of the Great Migration. What started the Great Migration? I don't know that. It happened, the Great Migration was happening, people were moving, but black people were moving. It's not just talking about the black women, it's talking about black people moving from south to north. The whole text, this text is about how this person, Barry Williams, helped the black women specifically and not the black people or all of them or even the men. So C is out because what motivated the start of the Great Migration is not being talked about in the text. As simple as that. So out of scope again. Let's look at D. To provide an overview of the employment challenges faced by black women. Okay, now stop here. Yes, the text does talk about the employment challenges black women faced in the South. But is that the focus of the text? Is that what the text is trying to convey? Or the reason why the problems are being mentioned to us is because they want to tell us why they required help from Barry Williams or how Barry Williams came into the picture. That's the reason, right? The reason why the employment challenges are even talked about in the text is because they want to talk about how Barry Williams helped them. Right? So clearly the focus is not the employment challenges, the focus is on Barry Williams. We definitely want the name of Barry Williams in the option that we pick up because that's the topic. That is how important the topic of the text is. The purpose of the text will only make sense when the topic is the part of the option. Now, if you look at the whole option choice D, to provide an overview of the employment challenges faced by black women in the agriculture and domestic spheres in the southern US. That's not the focus of the text. These challenges are being talked about because they want to talk about how Barry Williams came to the picture. And so you're left with A, that's the correct option. Now, if you read the whole option, it says to introduce and illustrate Barry Williams' integral role in supporting other black women as their circumstances changed during the part of the Great Migration. That's true. The circumstances changed, they needed help, and that is when this person, Barry Williams, came into the picture. That is how important it is to identify the topic of the text. The topic of the text was Barry Williams for sure, and I do want the mention of this person in the correct option that I pick up. Now, option D could be eliminated because it was just partially correct. It is talking about something that's been talked about in the text, but this is not the main purpose. This tells us that not everything that's been talked about in the text can be your main purpose. The main purpose is always why that's been told to us. Why the challenges are being mentioned in the text, to talk about Barry Williams, to talk about how she came into the picture. So A is the clear-cut answer choice over here. A is the clear choice over here that we can pick up. Let's see the next question, and this is part to whole text and the difficulty level is medium. Read the question stem. Which choice best describes the function of the underlined sentence in the text as a whole? Function of the underlined sentence means we are dealing with a part to whole text type. Let's go ahead and read the text now. Archaeological excavation of the Market Street, Chinatown. So we are talking about some archaeological excavation of this place. A 19th century Chinese American community in this place, again California, provided the first evidence that Asian food products were imported to the US in the 1800s. Now take a pause. You have a colon over here. If you know the usage of colon, you'll know the later part is basically nothing but the explanation, more explanation on the previous bit. What are we talking about? We're talking about some archaeological excavation that happened, and it gives us the first evidence that Asian food products were imported to the US in this particular time frame in the 1800s. Let's read ahead. Bones from a freshwater fish species native to Southeast Asia. Now this is basically that gives us the first evidence of these imports. Now again, let's just take away the main aspect from the sentence. It's simply telling me that the excavation told us about or gave us the first evidence of the Asian food products being imported to the US in the 1800s. Let's read ahead. Now this is the main sentence. The focus should be on this particular sentence. We have to identify why this sentence is given to us, right? Let's read ahead. So J, that is Hong Kong based import or export firms, likely coordinated the fish's transport from Chinese operated fisheries in Vietnam and Malaysia to North American markets. So this is the company that basically helped do this import, right? They were conducting this import by, operating fisheries in Vietnam and Malaysia to North American markets. They were helping with the imports, right? What is this sentence telling me? It's simply telling me how that import was done. Let's read the next sentence. This route reveals the often overlooked multinational dimensions of the trade networks linking Chinese diaspora communities. Now, this particular route that this company took is explaining something further. It's explaining the multinational dimensions of the trade networks linking Chinese diaspora communities. It's revealing something. This explanation of the route is explaining or revealing some information. Now, with this understanding, let's go ahead and eliminate our options. A, it explains why efforts to determine the country of origin of the items mentioned in the previous sentence remain inconclusive. There is nothing inconclusive that's been given to us in the text. They have in fact found the first evidence to something. There is something definitely conclusive. So A is out because this is contradicting the text. Let's go to B now. It provides information that helps support a claim about a discovery's significance that is presented in the following sentence. Now, what is the following sentence? It's talking about a particular revelation. Something is being revealed. Now, what is the option B telling us? That this underlying text is helping us support a claim about a discovery significance that's been told to us in the next sentence. Yes, this route that's been explained to us in the previous sentence is revealing something. So it's definitely supporting something that's been given to us in the next sentence. I like the choice B because I could not eliminate anything over here. Anyhow, let's go to choice C now. It traces the steps that were taken to locate and recover the objects. Now, the sentence in question is not telling me about the steps, right? It's not telling me what was the first step that was taken, what was the next, and so on. And it's definitely not about locating and recovering the objects. It's about how the import was done in 1800s. Right? It's not about what happened after 1800s in order to locate and recover the objects. So C is out because it's just talking about some irrelevant sentence. It's not relevant to the sentence that is underlined. I can call this irrelevant or out of scope as well. Let's go to D. It outlines a hypothesis that additional evidence discussed in the following sentence casts some doubt on. Now, the next sentence, after the underlined bit, it's not casting doubt on anything. It's further supporting something. If anything, it's confirming something, right? So there's no casting doubt or, going against something. It's contradictory. This particular option is contradictory to the text. So I'm going to eliminate it, and choice B is a very clear choice that I can pick up as my answer. So again, how did I eliminate my options for this question type? Two of the options were contradictory to the text and one option was out of scope or irrelevant to the sentence that's been underlined. You really have to focus on the sentence that's been underlined. Whichever option you pick up should be relevant to the sentence that is in question. Now with this, we'll move on to the next difficulty level and we'll take up the whole text question type first. Alright, so now we'll be taking a hard difficulty level question for whole text types. The first step is always the same. Read the question stem. The mention of main purpose tells us that we are dealing with a whole text subtype question. Let us read the text now. The field of study called affective neuroscience seeks instinctive psychological causes for feelings such as pleasure or displeasure. Now, what is this sentence doing? This sentence is simply introducing the concept of affective neuroscience to us. What is that? Right? That's been explained to us. Correct? I don't need to take away everything from here. I simply need to know what the sentence is doing. It's talking about, or it's introducing the affective neuroscience concept to me. Let's read the next sentence. Because these sensations are linked to a chemical component, there is example given over here. Let's avoid reading this. Because these sensations are linked to a chemical component, they can be said to have a partly psychological basis. Now, what is this sentence doing? It's explaining that emotions like pleasure are connected to the release of dopamine. That's the example. However, I'm focusing more on what the overall sentence is saying. It gives us a physical foundation. These emotions gives us a physical foundation, and that's what they are talking about. Let's look at the next sentence. These processes have been described in mammals, but now very important to notice the contradictory words while you're reading the text. So these processes have been described in mammals, but something else happened. So J.H. and his colleagues have recently observed that some behaviors of honeybees are also motivated by dopamine-based signaling process. Now there's something that they found, right? That it's basically saying that this particular process was seen in humans or mammals, but this study J.H. and colleagues did, they showed that the honeybees are also showing such behaviors like mammals. They exhibit behaviors driven by dopamine, suggesting that there is a similar psychological basis for emotions in different species. Now, to say what this whole text is discussing, the topic would be, it's talking about affective neuroscience. Right? And why are we talking about affective neuroscience? Because it's trying to tell us that there are certain features that can be seen in mammals which are also observed in honeybees. With this understanding, we can move on to our option elimination stage. Let's read the first option. It describes an experimental method of measuring It describes an experimental method of measuring the strength of physiological responses in humans. Now, the text is not focused on experimental methods or on human-specific psychological responses. It discusses broader findings about dopamine's role in behavior in both humans and insects. That is how honeybees came into the picture, right? So, A is incorrect because humans are not the focus. There is something else also that's been talked about. Now, let's look at B. It illustrates processes by which certain insects can express how they are feeling. Now, the text does mention the behaviors in human beings, but it does not specifically claim that insects express feelings overall. It discusses dopamine-based processes, but without referring to feelings being explicitly expressed by insects generally. So, B is out because it's a very broad option to pick up. Insects, it's a very broad word to pick up from the mention of honeybees. Let's look at C now. It summarizes a finding suggesting that some mechanisms in the brains of certain insects resemble mechanisms in mammalian brains. Now, this definitely sounds correct. The reason being that it is accurately capturing the main purpose of the text, which highlights that similar dopamine based mechanisms are found in both mammals and honeybees. It is summarizing the whole connection between these processes in different species. So I like this option as of now. Let's look at D. It presents research showing that certain insects and mammals behave similarly when there is a possibility of reward for their actions. Now, the text does mention that, dopamine's role in both mammals and honeybees. It doesn't specifically state that both the groups behave similarly when a reward is expected. It focuses more on the psychological mechanism than the similarity of behaviors. Right? So D is out because again this is an option that's not the focus. This is an option that is also irrelevant in a certain manner. So again, if you focus on the right aspects of the text, that is not getting into the details, you'll definitely be able to pick up the correct option. Now with this understanding, let's pick up the next question. Right, so we'll be taking up a hard difficulty level question for part 2 whole text, and again the mention of function of the underlined question tells us that we are dealing with a part 2 whole text subtype. Let us go ahead and read the text. How lifelike are they? Now this is the underlined sentence. Till here I don't know what they is referring to, who are we calling lifelike, and anything about it, right? So more details on this particular sentence will be given to me later in the text. Let's read the next sentence. Many computer animators prioritize this question as they strive to create even more realistic environments and lighting. So what is this sentence telling me? It's talking about many animators focusing on making their animated worlds and lighting look real, often mimicking reality as close as possible. Now let's read the next sentence. Generally, while characters in computer animated films appear highly exaggerated, environments and lighting are carefully engineered to mimic reality. Now this means that although animated characters might be exaggerated, that is not realistic in their experience or actions, the surrounding environments and lighting are designed to look realistic. They are designed to look very real. Let's look at the next sentence. Again, it starts with a but, so again pay attention to this contradictory word. But some animators such as Pixar's Sanjay Patel are focused on a different question. Now this is an introduction to another perspective, specifically from animators like Sanjay Patel, who do not prioritize realism in the same way. Let's look at the next sentence now. Okay, rather than asking first whether the environments and lighting they are creating are convincingly lifelike, Patel and others are asking whether these elements reflect their film's unique stories. Now there's a shift over here. This particular shift focus from realism to storytelling. Patel and other animators focus on whether the design choices support the story rather than whether they look real. Now, if you notice, what is the first sentence doing now? Let's go back to that particular underlined sentence and let's understand what is it doing. This underlined question refers to a key issue that many computer animators consider as they work to make animated films. It is about how realistic or lifelike the environments and characters in animations should be. This is what the question is based upon. With this understanding, let's go ahead and start eliminating our options. Let's look at the first option over here. It reflects a primary goal that many computer animators have for certain components of the animations they produce. Now clearly this underlined question represents the main goal of many animators, which is to create environments and lighting that are convincingly lifelike. This goal is the starting point for the discussion in the text and it sets up the contrasting approach that follows. So I don't find anything wrong with choice A. It is definitely talking about the underlying question and it's telling me what is the significance of this question. Let's look at B now. It presents a concern of computer animators who are more interested in creating unique background and lighting effects than realistic ones. Now this underlying question refers to animators striving for realism, not those who focus on unique non-realistic effects. Animators like Sanjay Patel who focus on storytelling come later in the text, but they are not the ones prioritizing realism as reflected by the underlying question. So this is out because it is not relevant to the sentence that's underlined. It's not relevant to the question. Let's look at C. It conveys the uncertainty among many computer animators about how to create realistic animations using current technology. Now, this underlying question that we have, it does not convey uncertainty about technology, but instead represents a common goal of making animations lifelike. There is no mention of technology limitations in the underlying question itself, so I'm going to eliminate this because this is again irrelevant to the question that's underlined. Let's look at D. It illustrates a reaction that audiences typically have to the appearance of characters created by computer animators. Now, the underlying question again does not discuss audience reactions but focuses on the animator's goals. The text talks about how animators approach realism, not how audiences would respond to their work, correct? So again, B, C, D could be eliminated because they're simply irrelevant to the question that's been underlined. This is how you can most of the times eliminate your options for this particular subtype. Whichever option you pick up, it has to be irrelevant. It has to be relevant to the sentence that's been underlined for sure. Now, with this understanding, we have come to the end. Now that we have gone through the steps to tackle the text purpose questions on digital SAT, you are well equipped to identify the main idea and author's intent with confidence. Remember, understanding the purpose of the passage is key. Remember, understanding the purpose of the passage is key to unlocking the rest of the answers in many of these questions. Thank you so much.